The village of Windmere sat nestled in a deep valley, surrounded by endless forests and silent mountains. For as long as anyone could remember, snow had never stopped falling. It blanketed the rooftops, weighed down the trees, and whispered through the narrow cobbled streets like a never-ending sigh. The sun visited only rarely, and when it did, it barely warmed the frostbitten earth. People in Windmere had grown used to the cold. Fires burned constantly in their hearths. Children were born into a world of white, and old folk told stories beside the flames, their voices thick with sorrow and mystery. One tale, told more often than others, was of Queen Snow, a powerful and distant ruler who lived beyond the White Forest, where no one dared to go. It was said she once ruled with kindness, her magic keeping balance between the seasons. But one day, something happened, no one knew what, and her heart turned to ice. Since then, her sorrow had spread across the land, freezing everything in its path. People said that she could hear anyone who stepped too far into her realm, and that those who did never returned. But in that same village, wrapped in layers of wool and courage, lived a girl named Elara. She was 15 winters old, with dark curls that peeked from under her fur-lined hood and eyes the color of stormy skies. While others grumbled about the cold, Elara always tried to see the beauty in it. Snow is just water dressed in its finest, she often said, much to the amusement of her neighbors. Elara lived with her younger brother, Kael, and their grandmother, Mira, who raised them after their parents passed away in a blizzard when Elara was just a child. Mira taught them how to survive in the cold, how to smile through hardship, and most importantly, how to believe in light even when the world seemed frozen. Kael was 11, curious and full of energy. He often wandered near the edge of the forest, always asking questions about what lay beyond. "Do you think Queen Snow is real?" he'd ask, his breath forming clouds in the air. Elara would laugh and ruffle his hair. "Real or not, you're not going out there alone." But one morning, after a fierce snowstorm that howled through the night, Kael was gone. Elara found his boots missing, the doors slightly ajar, and small footprints leading out into the snow. Panic rose in her chest like a wave. She called his name, searched the village, and asked every neighbor, but no one had seen him. "He's gone into the White Forest," one elder whispered, shaking her head. "The queen has taken him." "Elara," Mira said, gripping her hand, "you mustn't follow. That forest is cursed. Many have gone, none have returned." But Elara could not sit and wait. She could not imagine a world where Kael's laughter vanished into the silence. So, with a pack of food, her thickest cloak, and her grandmother's blessings wrapped in prayer, Elara stepped beyond the village border, into the storm, into the cold, and into the unknown. Snowflakes fell gently as if trying to stop her. The trees of the White Forest stood like silent guards, tall and silver, their trunks etched with ancient ice. The deeper she walked, the quieter the world became. No birds, no wind, just the crunch of her boots in the snow and her breath in the stillness. She followed Kael's footprints for as long as she could. But as twilight began to fall, the tracks faded, swallowed by new snowfall. Elara knelt in the snow, heart pounding. "Kael," she whispered into the vast, frozen silence, "I'm coming for you." The forest offered no reply. But as she stood, something moved in the trees, a flicker of white, too quick to see clearly. Her fingers tightened on the scarf around her neck, and she pressed on. Somewhere far beyond the trees, beyond what maps could tell and stories could capture, the Queen Snow opened her eyes. A presence had entered her realm. A warm soul in the land of cold. And for the first time in 100 years, something stirred in her frozen heart. Elara pushed deeper into the forest, the snow clinging to her boots and lashes like a quiet warning. The light faded quickly in this part of the world. What little sun broke through the clouds vanished behind the trees, leaving her to navigate by the pale glow of snow and the steady rhythm of her own heart. Everything felt strange here. The trees were too still. The wind had no voice. And every step seemed to echo louder than it should. But Elara did not stop. Every time fear tried to creep in, she imagined Kael's bright smile, the way he used to tug her sleeve when he was excited, or how he always offered the last piece of bread at dinner. That warmth was her compass. After some time, she came upon a clearing unlike any other she'd seen. It was perfectly circular and unnaturally smooth, like glass laid over snow. At the center stood a tall stone archway wrapped in ice, glowing faintly blue. Etched into the stone were words in a language Elara didn't understand, yet she felt them somehow, not with her mind, but in her bones. "The path ahead tests not your strength, but your spirit." As she stepped beneath the archway, the world around her changed. The snow began to swirl upward instead of down. The trees bent inward, creating a tunnel of white and silver. The temperature dropped further, and even the scarf around her neck seemed to stiffen. Every breath she took turned into mist, hanging longer in the air than it should. She was not alone. Something was watching her. At first, she thought it might be the wind, but the sensation was too deliberate. Like eyes pressed against the back of her neck, too cold to be curious, too ancient to be kind. Then came the voice, not spoken aloud, but inside her mind. Cold, elegant, distant. Why do you enter my domain? Elara froze. I'm looking for my brother. Kael, he's just a boy. He doesn't belong here. There was a pause, like the forest was listening. Then, many have entered. None have returned. Turn back, or you too shall be lost. No, Elara said, louder now, firmer. I won't leave without him. Silence fell again, deeper than before. Then, a rush of snow rose around her like a wall, and from it emerged a shape, small, sleek, and silver. A fox. It moved gracefully, without a sound, its fur glimmering as if dusted with stars. Its eyes were sharp and knowing. Hello, Elara whispered, not sure if it could speak. The fox tilted its head, then sat on its haunches and flicked its tail. You're bold, it said, its voice a rich tone of mischief and wisdom. Most humans who cross into the frozen path turn around the moment they hear her voice. Her? Elara asked. The queen, the fox replied. Queen Snow. But you already knew that. Do you know where my brother is? I know many things, said the fox, but finding him will not be so simple. The queen's realm bends around emotion. What you seek will be hidden until your heart is ready to see. Elara frowned. That's not helpful. The fox chuckled. I didn't say I was here to help. But I am curious about you. It stood and began walking down the path. Come, girl, if you wish to survive the frozen path, you will need guidance. And I, Nilo, am the finest guide in these woods. Elara hesitated only a moment before following. Nilo, is it? Why help me now? Nilo looked over his shoulder. Because no one has walked this far with so much warmth in their heart for a very long time. That kind of warmth does strange things to this place. As they walked, the path twisted and shifted. Sometimes the snow piled high into walls that formed corridors. Other times the sky opened wide above them, full of swirling gray clouds like painted smoke. Along the way, Elara saw odd sights. A bird suspended mid-flight, its wings frozen. In the air, a deer made of pure frost, standing perfectly still, like a statue. A tree with icicles hanging from its branches like wind chimes, singing a sad melody. Why is everything frozen? She asked. Nilo's ears twitched. This is more than winter. This is grief. The queen's sorrow runs so deep it touches every living thing. Time, motion, even memory, they all freeze here. Then we have to stop it, Elara said. We have to help her. Nilo paused, then smiled faintly. You're the first to ever say that. Most want to defeat her. Or flee. You want to help. They reached a bridge of ice stretched over a deep, frozen river. Elara's reflection stared back at her from the ice, only it wasn't exactly her. The reflection wore a crown of snowflakes and had tears in her eyes. She knelt and touched the ice. The image vanished. What was that? She asked. A warning, Nilo said. Or a promise. The queen's magic mirrors more than just your face. When they reached the far bank, the wind howled. Nilo stopped. This is where I leave you for now, he said. The palace is still far, but soon, you'll find what you need. But what if I get lost? Nilo pointed with his nose. Follow the silence. Where it is deepest, she is near. Then, with a flick of his tail, he vanished into the snow like a shadow swallowed by dusk. Elara stood alone once more. She tightened her cloak, looked toward the silent white hills ahead, and whispered, I'm coming, Kael. No matter how far, no matter how cold, above her, far beyond the clouds, Queen Snow stood on her balcony of crystal and frost. And for the first time in decades, her heart gave the tiniest ache. The cold grew sharper as Elara continued her journey. It wasn't just the kind of cold that bit at your fingers and toes, it was the kind that reached inside you, numbing your thoughts, slowing your breath, whispering that you were alone. Snow fell in soft, endless flurries. The sky seemed to grow darker, even though the sun had not yet set. She kept walking, her boots crunching softly on the frozen path, her hands tucked deep into her cloak. Time had become slippery in this place. Minutes felt like hours, or perhaps they were. The only thing that grounded her was the memory of Kael, his laughter, his silly stories, the way he would hum tunes while tying knots. She couldn't stop, not now. At last, the trees thinned, and she reached the edge of a great icy plain. Beyond it stood a towering structure so vast, so breathtaking, that Elara gasped. It rose from the snow like a shard of the moon itself, tall, sharp, impossibly beautiful. Its walls shimmered with translucent blues and silvers, catching the faint light like frozen starlight. Towers spiraled high into the sky, each one crowned with delicate spires of ice. Windows glowed faintly with a pale light, though no fire burned within. There were no guards, no gates, no walls. Only silence. The air around the palace felt heavier, as if sound itself had been taken away. Elara stepped forward, and noticed something eerie. Her footsteps made no sound. She clapped her hands. Nothing. She gasped, and heard only silence. Her voice was gone, or rather, muffled by the magic of this place. She clutched the pendant her grandmother had given her, a small silver charm in the shape of a sun, and moved forward. The main entrance was a pair of massive crystal doors carved with snowflakes so intricate they looked like lace. As she approached, the doors creaked open on their own with a soundless sigh, revealing a vast hall lined with pillars of clear ice and chandeliers that hung like frozen waterfalls. Elara stepped inside. The doors closed behind her. Suddenly, everything felt slower. Each step took effort, as if the air had turned to syrup. The silence became a weight pressing down on her shoulders, threatening to steal her will. She pressed on, through halls that twisted like frozen rivers. Statues lined the corridors, figures of people, frozen in poses of surprise or fear, their expressions haunting. One looked like a merchant, another like a soldier. All were preserved in crystal, trapped in the moment they had entered this realm. And then she saw him. Kael. He stood behind a wall of ice in a side chamber, eyes wide open, hand outstretched, as if he had been reaching for her. Kael, she cried, but the sound was swallowed by the magic of the palace. Her hand slammed against the ice wall, but it didn't crack. Her fingers trembled. Suddenly, a gust of cold swept down the hall, and the temperature dropped even further. The walls sparkled with a new shimmer, and frost curled around her boots. A presence had arrived. Elara turned slowly. There, standing atop the grand staircase of the palace, stood Queen Snow. She was as beautiful as she was terrifying. Her skin was pale as moonlight, her hair a cascade of silver white, flowing like mist behind her. Her eyes were piercing ice blue, ancient and unreadable. She wore a gown spun from snowflakes and starlight, and a crown that glittered with frozen thorns. When she moved, it was like a breeze through the trees, soft, silent, absolute. Elara tried to speak, but her voice failed. Queen Snow descended the staircase, her expression emotionless, her gaze fixed on Elara. "You have come far," the queen said at last, her voice like wind over glass. "Few make it beyond the forest." Elara swallowed and nodded, clutching the sun pendant. She pointed to the wall where Kael stood frozen. "I know why you're here," the queen said. "You seek what was taken." Elara nodded again, her eyes pleading. Queen Snow walked past her, slowly circling her like a snowstorm circling a fire. "Love," the queen murmured. "It drives mortals to foolish ends. You step into my realm, carrying warmth where there should be none." She paused in front of the frozen wall where Kael was trapped. "He entered on his own," she said, without a trace of regret. "Curiosity is dangerous here." Elara's hands balled into fists. She pointed at Kael again, then at herself, then pressed her palms together, begging. Queen Snow studied her. "You wish to trade?" she asked. Elara shook her head. "No, you would not sacrifice yourself to save him." Her voice was laced with curiosity. Elara slowly shook her head again, then drew a heart in the air with her finger, then mimed taking it out of her chest and placing it next to Kael's frozen form. Understanding flickered across the queen's face. "Not a sacrifice," the queen whispered. "A gift." For the first time, Queen Snow's expression softened, only slightly, but enough. She turned away, walking back toward the center of the grand hall. "Come," she said, "let us speak where hearts may be tested." Elara followed, her steps echoing in the stillness, though no sound was heard. As the queen led her deeper into the palace, the silence seemed to lift, just a little. A whisper of sound returned, like wind in distant trees. Elara could hear her own heartbeat again. The queen gestured to a circular room filled with mirrors of ice, each one shaped like a snowflake. At the center was a throne of crystal, untouched by time. "You are not the first to come here with a heart full of love," Queen Snow said as she sat upon the throne. "But love alone is not enough. If you wish to free your brother, you must prove your heart holds more than warmth. It must hold truth." She raised one hand, and the mirrors around the room began to shimmer. "3 trials," she said. Complete them, and you will find him again. Fail, and you will join him in stillness. Elara stared at her, afraid but unshaken. The queen nodded. Then let the first trial begin. And with a gesture, the mirrors pulsed with light, and the room began to shift, walls fading, time bending, and Elara's reflection stepping out from the ice to face her. The throne room was no longer a room. As Elara stood in the heart of the queen's palace, surrounded by walls of icy mirrors, everything shifted. The air rippled, the mirrors darkened, then shimmered again, showing not Elara's reflection, but her memories. The queen remained seated on her crystal throne, her expression unreadable, her eyes never leaving Elara. Snowflakes floated gently from above, though no roof remained. Elara turned in place, staring at the mirrors. They reflected her life. Her parents smiling by a fire, Kael learning to tie his boots, Mira stirring soup in a wooden bowl. But then the mirrors began to change. They showed her failures. She saw herself as a little girl, hiding under a table, too afraid to help her parents during the last storm they faced. She saw Kael crying one night when she had yelled at him in frustration. She saw Mira, sick and weak, as Elara slipped out to gather wood and returned too late. Tears welled in Elara's eyes. "What is this?" she asked, her voice low and thick with sorrow. Queen Snow's voice came softly from the throne. "This is your heart, child. Its warmth is not only love and courage, but also guilt, fear, anger. To know who you truly are, you must see all of yourself." Elara turned to face the queen directly. "Why are you doing this? What do you gain from holding him captive? From keeping this whole world frozen?" Queen Snow's gaze hardened. "You speak as though you understand grief." "Don't I?" Elara said, voice trembling but firm. "I lost my parents when I was just a child. I've seen hunger, sickness, and fear. I've held my brother while he cried. I know what it means to live with pain, but I keep going. Because love is still there." A long silence fell. The snow stopped falling. Then, slowly, Queen Snow rose from her throne. As she stepped forward, her gown of ice whispered along the crystal floor. "You speak of love as if it heals all," the queen said. "But what if it does not? What if love is the very thing that broke me?" Elara watched as the mirrors around her shimmered again, and now they showed the queen's past. The images played like memories. A younger queen, radiant and kind, walking through gardens blooming in spring. Her laughter echoed through halls now silent. Then came a man, a tall, noble figure with warm eyes and strong hands. He placed a crown of flowers on her head. They danced beneath the stars. They ruled together with joy. Elara watched, captivated, but then, dark clouds rolled into the memory. War, loss, betrayal. The man disappeared. The queen stood alone on a balcony as the seasons turned cold. A final image. Her hands clutching her heart as a storm of snow burst from her chest, covering the land in endless winter. The mirrors faded. The silence returned. Elara stepped closer. "You froze the world, to stop feeling." Queen Snow's voice cracked slightly. "I could not bear the pain. So I buried it. I buried everything. But that pain, that grief, is part of love too," Elara said gently. "You locked it away, and with it, you locked away your joy." The queen looked down, her face for the first time showing sorrow, not just stillness. "I could not save him," she whispered. Elara said nothing, only reached into her cloak and pulled out her sun pendant. The silver charm shimmered faintly in the light of the mirrors. "My grandmother gave me this," she said. "She said even in the darkest winter, the sun is still there. Hidden maybe, but not gone." She held it out. The queen stared at it, her icy expression faltering. "You've forgotten what warmth feels like," Elara said. "Let me remind you." For a long moment, the queen said nothing. Then, slowly, she reached out. Her fingers brushed the pendant. And the world around them shook. A sound rang out, a note, clear and beautiful. The mirrors cracked, not violently, but gently, as if the truth had finally been accepted. The snow stopped falling. The silence lifted. Queen Snow took a step back, her hand to her chest. From beneath her icy gown, her heart began to glow, a soft blue light, dim but steady. "I feel something," she said, breathless. "It's your heart," Elara said. "It's still alive." Queen Snow looked up at her, eyes full of wonder and pain. "So long, I've been so long in silence." Then the mirrors reformed, brighter now, surrounding them like stars. "The trial of truth," the queen said. "You have passed it, not through strength, but through understanding." I had forgotten how powerful that can be. Behind them, the wall of ice that had trapped Kael shattered like thin glass. Elara spun around. "Kael," He collapsed into her arms, dazed but breathing, warmth already returning to his skin. Elara, he whispered. I heard music. I dreamed of light. She held him close, tears streaming down her cheeks. You're safe now. Queen Snow watched them, her arms wrapped around herself. For the first time in a century, she shivered, not from cold, but from feeling. You've done more than save him, she said. You've begun to melt this place. The floor beneath them cracked gently, revealing patches of stone and forgotten moss. The ice around the pillars turned to dew. The frost on the mirrors turned into crystal tears. Elara stood, holding Kael's hand. Then help us melt the rest. Queen Snow stepped toward them. If you are willing, I can show you the next path. There is still darkness that holds me. But perhaps with your warmth. Elara nodded. Let's walk it together. For the first time, Queen Snow smiled. And in that moment, the Palace of Silence took its first breath in 100 years. Kael's hand was warm in Elara's. A comforting weight, a steady reminder that he was real and alive beside her once more. The great hall of the Palace of Silence had begun to thaw. Tiny rivulets of water ran along the once frozen floor, and soft sunlight filtered through cracks in the icy ceiling. Yet Elara knew the journey was far from over. Queen Snow stood before them, her long gown shimmering with melting frost. Her expression was no longer cold, but thoughtful, haunted, even. Her voice, once like wind over ice, now held the softness of early spring. The silence was only the first prison, she said, gazing into one of the now clear mirrors. But my heart remains chained by what I lost. To free this realm, and me, you must complete the next trial, the test of warmth. Kael looked up, blinking. Wait, another trial. Elara gave his hand a light squeeze. It's not just about saving you anymore. It's about saving her, too. The queen raised a hand, and the thawing mirrors around them shimmered again. One by one, they began to dissolve, not crack, but melt away, revealing a passage made of woven tree branches and golden light. It felt warmer, inviting even, though the air around them still clung to chill. Follow the light, Queen Snow said. Only those who carry warmth in their soul may pass. Elara stepped forward. Kael hesitated for only a moment before following. As they entered the passage, the icy palace behind them faded into mist. The silence gave way to sound, birds chirping faintly in the distance, the whisper of wind through trees. They were no longer in the palace. They stood on the edge of a great glade, where snow blanketed the ground in soft waves, and gentle hills stretched out to a horizon kissed by golden sunlight. The trees here were tall and ancient, their trunks covered in frost, but their branches still bore leaves, silver and gold, as if untouched by time. Elara stepped forward, the snow surprisingly soft beneath her boots. The warmth didn't come from heat, but from something deeper, something alive. She could feel it in the way her heartbeat slowed, the way the air wrapped around her like a woolen blanket. What do we do here? Kael asked quietly. Before Elara could answer, a low hum filled the air, like the earth itself was speaking. And then, from the trees, they came. Shimmering figures with translucent skin and eyes like pale stars. They moved like wind, drifting toward the siblings with grace. One, taller than the others, stepped forward and raised a hand. You come to face the test of warmth, the spirit said, its voice like chimes in the breeze. You must now give, without asking. Heal, without knowing the wound. Warm, without fire. Elara's brow furrowed. How do we do that? The spirit gestured, and the snow before them parted to reveal 3 frozen figures, encased in ice like statues. A child, an old woman, and a wounded wolf. They are lost, the spirit said. You must give each what they need. If your warmth is true, the ice will melt. Elara and Kael exchanged glances. 3, Kael said. We'll each take one, and the last, together. Elara nodded. I'll go to the child. She knelt beside the small figure, frozen mid-run, tears still visible on the girl's icy cheeks. Elara's heart ached. She remembered her own childhood. The fear, the hunger, the nights she curled beneath the stairs, waiting for her parents to return. She reached out, placed a hand on the ice, and whispered. It's okay now, you're not alone. She closed her eyes and pictured her village. The warm kitchen, Myra's laughter, Kael chasing chickens through the snow. She shared those memories, not with words, but with feeling. A glow spread from her hand, golden and soft. The ice cracked, and melted. The child gasped. As the ice vanished, her small form collapsed into Elara's arms, warm and alive. She looked up at Elara, smiled faintly, and then vanished in a shimmer of light. Kael approached the old woman. She was hunched, her hands clutched to her chest, her eyes closed as if in pain. Kael hesitated, then reached into his coat and pulled out something Elara hadn't seen in years, an old scarf, their father's, worn and patched but still whole. I was going to give this to you, he said softly to Elara, but I think she needs it more. He wrapped the scarf gently around the frozen woman's shoulders and whispered, you are remembered. You are still needed. The ice cracked. The woman opened her eyes and gave a tired, grateful smile. Then she, too, vanished into light. Now only the wolf remained. Its body was stiff, its fur rimmed with frost. One leg was twisted awkwardly. Elara knelt beside it, while Kael placed a hand on its back. What does it need? Kael asked. Elara looked into the wolf's frozen eyes. Not comfort, not warmth, forgiveness. She took a breath. For the things it did in fear. For the pain it caused without meaning to. They both placed their hands on the wolf's chest. It's okay, Elara whispered. You don't have to carry it anymore. Warmth spread between their palms. The ice shattered. The wolf leapt free, shook off the frost, and let out a powerful, beautiful howl that echoed through the trees. Then it bowed its head to them, and bounded into the forest, leaving a trail of flowers in its path. The frost spirit reappeared. You have given without asking. Healed without knowing. Warmed without fire. The test of warmth is past. The glade filled with light. Snow melted. Trees bloomed. Birds sang. The golden sun rose fully above the horizon, and for the first time in centuries, this part of the Queen's realm was alive again. A path opened ahead, lined with blooming frost flowers and glowing stones. At the end of the path stood Queen Snow. She was changed. Her gown shimmered not with frost, but with dew and morning light. Her crown had softened into delicate crystal blossoms. Her face was still pale, but no longer cold. I felt what you did, she said. I watched as you gave. As you healed. As you forgave. She stepped forward. And so must I. Elara stepped toward her, heart racing. Does this mean, it's over? Queen Snow shook her head gently. There is one final test. The most difficult of all. Elara braced herself. The test of letting go. The blooming glade faded slowly as the light dimmed. Soft winds stirred petals from frost flowers, scattering them across the path like snowflakes. Queen Snow led Elara and Kael into a valley where the sky seemed closer, the silence deeper, and the air heavy, not with cold, but with memory. Here, the ice had not melted. Towering walls of frozen mist surrounded them. The valley was quiet, not like the silence of death, but the kind that settles in a place where grief has made a home. This is the oldest part of my heart, Queen Snow said as they walked. Here lies the pain I never faced. The part one buried so deeply, it changed the very land around me. She stopped before a lake entirely frozen over. The ice was glass smooth, perfectly clear. Beneath its surface, locked in stillness, was the image of a man. Tall, strong, kind eyes. The same man Elara had seen in the mirrors of the throne room. Her husband. Elara stepped closer and peered into the ice. The man's face was peaceful, like someone merely sleeping beneath the surface. Queen Snow knelt beside the frozen lake, one hand placed gently against it. I called this the sanctuary of memory, she said softly. But it was a tomb. Not for his body, but for my heart. Kael looked between the queen and the ice. Why did you trap him here? I didn't mean to, she replied. When he died in battle, I broke. My magic responded to my grief. It froze the moment, sealed it away, and with it, sealed me. Tears filled her eyes, though they didn't fall. I believed that as long as I kept him here, untouched, I could keep a part of him. I thought I was honoring him. But I see now, I was clinging to pain. Not love. Elara knelt beside her. What would he want for you? Queen Snow smiled through her sorrow. He once told me, that winter was only beautiful because it led to spring. That no season lasts forever. That hearts must change as the earth does. She looked to Elara. And now, I must let him go. She stood, lifted her hands, and took a trembling breath. The final test, she whispered. Letting go, of the past that binds me. The air turned still. The wind paused. Even the light seemed to hold its breath. Queen Snow's hands glowed with silver blue light. The lake responded, its surface beginning to shimmer and pulse. The figure of her husband shifted ever so slightly, as if ready to rise, or vanish. Then, she hesitated. Her hands faltered. A sob broke from her chest. I can't. What if I forget him? What if letting go means I lose him forever? Elara stepped forward. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without pain. Carrying love without being chained by it. She reached out and gently took the queen's hand. You taught me something, Elara said. That even a frozen heart can beat again. You gave me the strength to find Kael, to face the silence, to forgive. Let me give that back to you now. Kael nodded. You don't have to do this alone. The queen closed her eyes. And then, she began to sing. It was a melody low and trembling at first, like wind through bare trees. But it grew, warmer and richer, like a sunrise breaking over a snowy field. The song filled the valley, not with sorrow, but with release. The lake began to melt. Slowly, steadily, the ice turned to mist. The figure of the man beneath the surface shimmered, his features softening, fading, returning not to the earth, but to memory. And as the final shard of ice dissolved, Queen Snow fell to her knees, crying, laughing, free. All around them, the valley changed. The walls of frozen mist vanished. Trees with silver leaves grew along the edges of the lake. Birds sang. The water sparkled under golden light. Spring had come to the final corner of the queen's frozen realm. Elara helped the queen to her feet. You did it, she whispered. Queen Snow looked down at her hands, still glowing faintly. It was not magic that broke the curse. It was love, and courage. Yours. She turned to Elara and Kael, her eyes full of gratitude. My heart is free, and so is the realm. With a wave of her hand, she summoned a path of light stretching through the woods, a way home. But before you go, the queen said, there is one more gift. She lifted her hands again. Snowflakes spun in the air, but these were golden, not white. They drifted toward Elara and Kael, swirling around them. Elara felt something enter her chest, a light, a warmth that wasn't hers alone. A blessing. The heart you carry has changed this land, Queen Snow said. And because of that, it will always carry a piece of its magic. Go now, back to your people. Bring warmth where there is cold. Hope where there is fear. The queen smiled one last time. And remember me, not as the queen who froze the world, but the one who thawed her own heart. Elara nodded, tears of joy now in her eyes. She looked to Kael. Ready to go home? He grinned. More than ready. And together, they walked into the light. The path of light carried Elara and Kael through the enchanted forest, past trees now bursting with blossoms of silver and blue. The snow beneath their feet melted with each step, revealing soft moss and wildflowers. It felt as though the entire realm sighed with relief, no longer trapped in a prison of grief and ice, but reborn in the warmth of renewal. As they walked, neither spoke for a while. There was no need. Their hearts beat in rhythm with the land, and every breath they took was full of freedom, memory, and peace. The glowing path gradually faded, and the air became familiar again, sharp with pine, earthy with soil. The sun peeked through thick clouds, golden and tender. The forest had returned to its natural state, not cursed, not enchanted, just alive. At last, the siblings saw the edge of their village, snow-covered rooftops, smoke rising gently from chimneys, distant laughter carried on the wind. Kael let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Do you think they'll believe us? Elara smiled. Maybe not, but they'll feel it. The realm is different now. We're different. As they stepped into the village, eyes widened. Children pointed. Elders wept. Mira, Elara's closest friend, rushed forward and wrapped her in a tight embrace. I thought we lost you both, she whispered, holding Elara like she might vanish again. Elara pulled back, her eyes glistening. We came close, but we found what was lost, and something more. Kael grinned. And I only almost died once. Twice, Elara corrected. The villagers gathered in the square, and slowly, Elara shared their story, of the silent palace, the cursed queen, the mirror trials, the frost spirits, and the test of letting go. Some gasped. Some cried. Many simply listened with wide eyes and open hearts. When she finished, the village elder stepped forward. His hands trembled as he took hers. You melted a frozen heart with kindness and truth. That is magic greater than any spell. That evening, the village held a feast, not because of tradition, but because joy demanded it. Lanterns were lit and hung on every branch, every doorway, every rooftop. Children danced. Elders sang. Food was passed from hand to hand like precious treasure. And through it all, Elara felt a quiet warmth in her chest. Not the magic the queen had left her with, but her own strength, now fully awakened. Later that night, Kael and Elara stood on the hill above the village, watching the lanterns float upward like stars. You're thinking about her, Kael said. Elara nodded. Queen Snow. I wonder what she's doing now. Kael tilted his head. Maybe she's planting flowers, writing poems, learning to laugh again. Elara smiled at the thought. She set us free, but we helped free her, too. Kael looked to the horizon. Do you think there are other frozen hearts out there? There always are, Elara said quietly. But now, we know how to reach them. As dawn approached, the first true sunrise in years broke across the sky. Golden light spread over the mountains, the trees, and the rooftops, casting the land in warmth. Elara closed her eyes, feeling it on her skin. The return of the sun. A new beginning. A promise. Moral lesson. True strength lies not in holding on to pain, but in the courage to let go. This story teaches that grief is a natural part of love, but we must not let it define us. Healing comes through connection, not isolation. Even the coldest heart can be thawed with compassion and understanding. Letting go of the past doesn't erase it, it honors it by allowing life to move forward. For more motivation stories, please like and subscribe this channel. Thanks for subscribe. God bless.